In a world where wealth can buy almost anything, mansions, cars, private jets, and even the illusion of happiness, it often hides the true measure of a person's heart. For Richard Langston, a self-made millionaire with a fortune that seemed limitless, life was a series of calculated moves, each designed to elevate him further into the stratosphere of success. But behind the polished facade of his opulent lifestyle, there was a void, a gaping emptiness that no amount of money could fill. Richard had everything the world deemed valuable, yet he lacked the one thing that truly mattered: compassion. For years, Lucky had been Richard's loyal companion, a blind dog with a heart full of unconditional love. Lucky didn't care about Richard's wealth or status. To him, Richard was simply the man who fed him, the man who occasionally scratched behind his ears, the man who was his entire world. But as the years passed, Richard's patience wore thin. The distractions of wealth, the parties, the business deals, the endless pursuit of more, dulled his affections. What was once a cherished bond became a burden, a reminder of a simpler life he no longer had time for. One cold autumn morning, Richard made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He loaded Lucky into the back seat of his sleek black car and drove deep into the forest, a vast, untamed wilderness that stretched for miles in every direction. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out as if to warn him of the cruelty he was about to commit. But Richard was unmoved. He opened the car door, pushed Lucky out onto the damp forest floor, and without a second glance, drove away. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the rustling of leaves and the faint chirping of birds. Lucky sat still, his cloudy eyes searching for a presence that would never return. The forest was a maze of unfamiliar sounds and smells, a world he had never known. Every rustling leaf, every distant howl of a predator sent shivers through his frail body. He was alone, disoriented, and utterly helpless. With no sight to guide him, Lucky relied on instinct, on the faintest sound of running water, the shifting wind, the damp earth beneath his trembling paws. That first night was the longest of his life. Fear gnawed at his heart, hunger clawed at his stomach, and the loneliness, that was the worst of all. Survival is a cruel teacher. It offers no comfort, no mercy, only the raw lesson of endurance. The blind dog staggered through the unknown, his senses sharpening, his instincts evolving. Every step was a battle, but he refused to surrender. Water became his first victory in a world designed for the strong. He found a small stream, its gentle murmur guiding him to the life-giving liquid. But the fight was far from over. The forest was alive with dangers, unseen eyes watching, hidden threats waiting. A hawk screeched overhead, its sharp talons a reminder of the predators that lurked in the shadows. Lucky's heart raced as he sniffed the air, trying to detect the faintest hint of danger. But then, something extraordinary happened. Nature, so often ruthless, seemed to recognize the blind dog's struggle. It was as if the forest itself had chosen to protect the forsaken creature. A pair of gentle deer approached him, their calm presence offering a fleeting moment of solace. They didn't see Lucky as a threat, but as a fellow being in need. Some say animals have an unspoken bond, a silent understanding beyond human grasp. And in this sacred wilderness, where the laws of man held no power, the blind dog found an unexpected lifeline. Word of the abandoned dog reached the town's edge. Some dismissed it as just another stray. Others saw something more, a story that begged to be told, a mystery unraveling in the depths of the trees. Flyers began to appear in local shops, their grainy photos of Lucky stirring a mix of curiosity and concern. Among those who took notice was Sarah, a rescuer with a heart tuned to the silent cries of the forgotten. She had seen suffering before, but something about this story, something about this dog, was different. Sarah wasn't the type to sit idly by. She had dedicated her life to helping animals in need, and Lucky's story struck a chord deep within her. She gathered her supplies, food, water, a blanket, and a first-aid kit, and set out into the forest. The dense underbrush and towering trees made the search difficult, but Sarah was relentless. She followed every lead, every faint paw print, every broken twig that hinted at Lucky's presence. Her determination was fueled by a single thought: no creature deserved to be abandoned, especially not one as vulnerable as Lucky. Meanwhile, Lucky's journey took an unexpected turn. A scent, faint but unmistakable, led him through tangled paths, through forgotten trails, to a cabin cloaked in vines, hidden from the world. The cabin was old, its wooden walls weathered by time, but it exuded a sense of warmth and safety. Lucky hesitated for a moment, his instincts torn between fear and hope. Then, with a cautious step, he approached the door. The door creaked open, revealing a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Her name was Maria, and she had once worked for Richard Langston. When she saw Lucky, her heart broke. "I've been waiting for you," she whispered, gathering him into her arms. Maria knew the truth about Richard's cruelty, the truth about the lives he had destroyed. And now, she had the proof to bring him to justice. Maria had not always lived in the forest. Once, she had been a part of Richard's world, a world of glittering parties, high-stakes deals, and hollow smiles. She had worked as his personal assistant, managing his schedule, his correspondence, and his endless demands. At first, she had admired him, his ambition, his intelligence, his seemingly unshakable confidence. But over time, she began to see the cracks in the facade. Richard was not the man he pretended to be. Behind closed doors, he was cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of empathy. Maria had witnessed his cruelty firsthand, the way he treated his employees, the way he discarded people like they were nothing more than pawns in his game. And then, one day, she had seen him strike Lucky, a blind, defenseless dog who had done nothing but love him unconditionally. That was the day Maria decided she could no longer be a part of his world. She quit her job, packed her bags, and retreated to the forest, where she could live a life of peace and purpose. But she never forgot what she had seen. And now, as she held Lucky in her arms, she knew it was time to confront the past. Back in the town, Sarah's search for Lucky was gaining momentum. She had enlisted the help of the local wildlife rescue organization, and together, they combed the forest for any sign of the blind dog. Flyers with Lucky's picture were posted in every shop, every cafe, every community center. The story of the abandoned dog had captured the hearts of the townspeople, and soon, volunteers began to join the search. Among them was Officer Ryan, a local policeman who had initially been skeptical but was now fully invested in the mission. "We're not giving up," Sarah told him, her voice firm with determination. "Not until we find him." As the days turned into weeks, Lucky began to transform. The once timid, disoriented dog was now a symbol of resilience and hope. He had learned to navigate the forest with a surprising level of awareness, relying on his heightened senses to detect danger and find food. His movements were deliberate, his instincts sharp. He had even formed a bond with the deer that frequented the clearing near Maria's cabin. They seemed to sense his vulnerability and offered him a sense of companionship that he had been missing. But despite his progress, Lucky still carried the scars of his past, both physical and emotional. His limp was a constant reminder of the injury Richard had inflicted, and his patchy fur spoke of a life filled with neglect. Yet, in his quiet moments, Lucky would sometimes pause, as if recalling the warmth of a loving hand that had once been there. Those fleeting memories, though painful, gave him the strength to keep going. Meanwhile, Richard Langston's world was beginning to crumble. The walls of wealth that had shielded him for so long could no longer protect him. Maria had gathered enough evidence to expose his crimes, photos, documents, and testimonies from former employees who had been too afraid to speak out. She shared her findings with Sarah and Officer Ryan, and together, they launched a campaign to bring Richard to justice. The media picked up the story, and soon, Richard's name was everywhere, on the news, in the papers, on social media. The public outcry was overwhelming. People were outraged by his cruelty, and his once impeccable reputation was now in tatters. Richard tried to fight back, hiring the best lawyers and spinning his own version of events, but the truth was undeniable. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. As Richard's world fell apart, Lucky's life was just beginning. Under Maria's care, he began to heal, both physically and emotionally. She nursed him back to health, feeding him nutritious meals, tending to his wounds, and giving him the love and attention he had been denied for so long. Slowly but surely, Lucky regained his strength. His limp became less pronounced, his fur grew back, and his eyes, though still cloudy, seemed to sparkle with a newfound joy. He spent his days exploring the forest, his bond with the deer growing stronger with each passing day. And at night, he would curl up by the fire, his head resting on Maria's lap, as she told him stories of hope and resilience. Lucky had found a new home, a new family, and a new purpose. He was no longer the abandoned dog in the forest. He was a survivor, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that even in the darkest of places, light can be found. The story of Lucky's rescue had a profound impact on the community. It brought people together, inspiring them to take action and make a difference. The local wildlife rescue organization saw a surge in volunteers and donations, allowing them to expand their efforts and help even more animals in need. Sarah became a local hero, her dedication and compassion earning her the respect and admiration of everyone who knew her. And Maria, once a recluse, found herself surrounded by friends and supporters who shared her vision of a kinder, more compassionate world. Together, they worked to create a sanctuary for abandoned and abused animals, a place where creatures like Lucky could find safety, love, and a second chance at life. But the story wasn't over yet. Richard Langston, desperate to salvage what was left of his reputation, decided to confront Maria. He arrived at her cabin one evening, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "You think you can ruin me?" he spat, his voice trembling with rage. "You're nothing but a nobody, hiding in the woods with a bunch of stray animals." Maria stood her ground, her eyes steady and unflinching. "I may be a nobody," she replied, her voice calm but firm, "but I have something you'll never have, a heart. And that's something no amount of money can buy." Richard's face turned red with fury, but before he could respond, Lucky stepped forward, his presence a silent but powerful reminder of the lives Richard had destroyed. For a moment, Richard seemed to falter, his bravado crumbling under the weight of his guilt. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his empire in ruins and his soul forever tarnished. With Richard gone, Maria and Lucky began a new chapter of their lives. The cabin in the forest became a sanctuary, a place of healing and hope for animals and humans alike. Sarah and Officer Ryan visited often, their bond with Maria and Lucky growing stronger with each visit. Together, they worked to create a better world, one where compassion triumphed over cruelty, and where no creature was ever abandoned or forgotten. Lucky, once a symbol of despair, had become a beacon of hope, his story inspiring countless others to open their hearts and make a difference. And as he ran through the sunny meadow, his tail wagging with joy, it was clear that he had found his happily ever after. The cabin in the forest soon became more than just a home for Maria and Lucky. It became a sanctuary, a safe haven for animals who had been abandoned, abused, or forgotten. The first resident was a timid cat named Willow, who had been found hiding under a dumpster, her fur matted and her eyes filled with fear. Maria took her in, gently cleaning her wounds and offering her a warm bed by the fire. Willow's transformation was slow but steady. With each passing day, she grew more confident, her purrs filling the cabin with a sense of peace and contentment. Next came a young fox with a broken leg, followed by a pair of orphaned raccoons. Each animal had its own story, its own scars, but together they formed a family built on love, trust, and second chances. Sarah's involvement in Lucky's rescue had changed her in ways she never expected. She had always been passionate about helping animals, but this experience had deepened her commitment and given her a new sense of purpose. She began to spend more time at the sanctuary, helping Maria care for the animals and sharing her knowledge of wildlife rehabilitation. But it wasn't just the animals who were healing. Sarah, too, found solace in the quiet moments, the gentle hum of the forest, the soft rustle of leaves, the warmth of Lucky's head resting on her lap. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace, as if she had finally found her place in the world. Officer Ryan's journey was no less transformative. He had joined the search for Lucky out of a sense of duty, but as he spent more time at the sanctuary, he began to see the world through a different lens. The animals' resilience, their capacity for forgiveness, and their ability to trust again despite their past traumas touched him deeply. He found himself opening up to Maria and Sarah, sharing stories of his own struggles and regrets. "I've spent so much of my life trying to be tough," he admitted one evening, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "But being here, seeing these animals, it's made me realize that there's strength in kindness, too." Maria smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves feel." Word of the sanctuary spread quickly, and soon, the community began to rally around Maria and her mission. Donations poured in, food, blankets, medical supplies, and even offers of volunteer help. Local schools organized field trips to the sanctuary, teaching children about compassion, empathy, and the importance of caring for all living beings. The sanctuary became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of cruelty and neglect, kindness could prevail. And at the heart of it all was Lucky, whose story continued to inspire and uplift everyone who heard it. As the sanctuary flourished, Richard Langston's life continued to unravel. The media scrutiny was relentless, and his once loyal business partners began to distance themselves from him. His empire, built on greed and exploitation, crumbled under the weight of his crimes. He tried to rebuild, to reinvent himself, but the public's outrage was too great. In a final act of desperation, he fled the country, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and despair. But even as he disappeared into obscurity, his actions continued to haunt him. The faces of those he had wronged, his employees, his friends, and especially Lucky, followed him wherever he went, a constant reminder of the lives he had destroyed. Lucky's story, however, was far from over. He had become a symbol of resilience, a living testament to the power of hope and compassion. His journey from abandonment to redemption inspired countless others to open their hearts and make a difference. Books were written about him, documentaries were made, and his image appeared on posters and billboards, urging people to adopt, not shop. But for Maria, Sarah, and Officer Ryan, Lucky was more than just a symbol. He was family, a reminder of the bonds that connect us all and the strength that comes from standing together. As the years passed, the sanctuary grew, becoming a beacon of hope for animals and humans alike. Maria, Sarah, and Officer Ryan worked tirelessly, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They faced challenges, of course. Funding was always a concern, and there were times when the weight of their mission felt overwhelming. But they never gave up. They knew that every life they saved, every animal they healed, was a victory, a small but powerful step toward a kinder, more compassionate world. And as they watched Lucky run through the meadow, his tail wagging with joy, they knew that their efforts had been worth it. For in the end, it wasn't about the money or the fame or the recognition. It was about love, hope, and the belief that even in the darkest of places, light can be found.